Now, as the weather gets colder, it's time to start looking out the old woolly jumpers. But perhaps you would like to knit your own.
Well, maybe you would, But did you know that it's National Wool Week?
Indeed.
Neither did we. So we caught up with Antje from the Yarn Cake Knitting Cafe in North Kelvinside to tell us more about the knitting scene in Glasgow.
We are Scotland's only dedicated knitting cafe. It's certainly not for little old grannies anymore, and the older clients that I've got would be very upset if somebody thought they were little old grannies. We've got a wide range of customers, starting from, I think my youngest customer at the moment is probably about 8 or 9. Drags her mum in to do yarn shopping for her because she's got grand plans for teddy bears, right up to, great old age. And yeah, certainly men, women, students, housewives, pilots, we have all kinds of customers, it's great. I'm not sure if it was a hobby for men, but it was certainly something that sailors, soldiers, the kind of folk that would spend a lot of time having to sit and not do very much would have done. So people who had to keep watch, people who were stuck on boats, it would have been a pastime that they would have had just to keep themselves occupied and also to actually do something useful with their time. The Glasgow School of Yarn is our birthday event, and it's part of the Creative Macintosh Festival that's running at the moment. And basically the Macintosh Society give us the Macintosh Church at Queen's Cross for 2 days, and we fill it with wool and have an awful lot of fun. We have workshops, we have mini tutorials, we have a marketplace, accessories, knitting bags, buttons, we have spinning demonstrations, we're bringing our cakes and stew and coffees and teas, and basically it's 2 days of literally fun. It is absolutely easy to pick up. Do not believe people who tell you that knitting is hard. It is a lie. You need to learn 2 things. You need to learn to knit and you need to learn to purl. And if you can do those 2 stitches, you can do anything to do with knitting. No matter how complex your knitting is, it's comprised of knit stitches and purl stitches. So if you can do those 2, you can do anything. And picking those 2 up, you can do that in an evening quite easily.
And we're joined by Antje from the Yarn Cake Knitting Cafe now, who you just saw in the video there. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Colin learning some tips there as well. Yeah. How busy is the knitting community here in Glasgow?
It's incredibly busy, actually. You'd be surprised. We have an astounding number of regulars. There's all kinds of knitting things happening left, right and centre. There's knitting groups. There's a knitting group pretty much every day of the week in Glasgow somewhere. Wow. We've got 2 a week ourselves. We've also got a spinning group once a month. Just the fibre community in Glasgow is astounding. It's wonderful.
Brilliant.
You'd have thought that, yeah, that's really interesting. And you said there's 2 classes a week, so anyone can come along, beginner level, to learn.
They're knitting groups as opposed to classes. We run classes as well, but the knitting groups we have on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Anyone can come along. You don't need to book. We don't charge for them. The Tuesday group in particular is aimed at beginners. We call them our knitorials. And they're kind of like a drop-in clinic. So if you're a complete beginner, you can pop in and we'll show you the basics. Like I showed Colin earlier, who is, by the way, a natural. He wouldn't believe me, but he is genuinely natural.
He's found his niche.
He does. We'll have him back. So yeah, on a Tuesday night, if you want to start from scratch, you can do that. If you've got a technique you want to learn and you need a bit of moral support while you're doing that, pop in, we'll help you out with that as well. If you need help finding a pattern, we'll do that as well. Fantastic. Thursday night's just a standard knit night. Gets a bit more raucous than the Tuesday night.
Oh, really?
Pretty good.
Oh, it's a rowdy one.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
We say no more on that then, do we?
No.
Oh, okay. That's not Thursday night, you said?
Yep.
Right, okay.
So we'll see you there next week.
Intrigued.
Excellent.
We heard it's National Wool Week. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
National Wool Week is a fairly new concept. It's been running the last few years. And basically it's to celebrate wool, British wool in particular, British knitting skills and wool skills in general. There's a massive event up in Shetland happening right now. There's Glasgow University have a knitter in residence that's doing lots of fun things at the moment. And we, because Wool Week actually coincides with the Yarn Cake's anniversary, we've got this 2-day event next week, the Glasgow School of Yarn, which also ties into that, and we're expecting upwards of 450 knitters for that.
Wow,
Love the Glasgow School of Yarn.
Yep.
And is it an expensive hobby?
It can be, but you can also do it on a budget. Basically, the range is vast. My cheapest ball of yarn starts at in around £2. Okay. My most expensive ball of yarn is £19.95. So it's a vast scale. Okay. But absolutely, we particularly make a point of having a good amount of budget options there, and you can absolutely knit a jumper for under 20 quid.
Antje, thank you so much for coming and for bringing cookies. We've got cookies from the cafe beside us.
Oh,
fantastic.
We'll have a munch of them, must we?
Hold on to these.
Certainly. Get those.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much for having me.